Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we will create another client which will integrate with Azure Foundry Agent and link with MCP Server. In one of my previous videos, we have created a web application which is ASP.NET application, and we use this app as a client which integrate with Azure Foundry Agent and also link with MCP Server. After that, we created another client which was a Microsoft form. So we use this form as a client, and when we submit this form, this calls Microsoft Automate, which is linked with Azure Foundry Agent and calls the MCP server. In today's video, we will create another client, which will be Copilot Studio. So we will create a client and we will take some information from the user and link it with Azure Foundry Agent, which will submit this information to MCP server tool. But before that, let's create a diagram and try to understand the architecture first. So we have Azure Storage Account as the destination. So let's add storage account. I hope you can see it. So we have a storage account which stores the blob in .mp4 and also stores the JSON files. So that is our destination. So the storage account is called by an MCP server. So this is called by an MCP server. So we use Postman to test MCP server. And then we had the Foundry, Azure Foundry. Don't have icon, so let's just draw it here. So we had Azure Foundry, which had multiple agents. Agent is linked with MCP server. So if I go to my Azure Foundry, I can go to agents and I can see I have multiple agents. So let's copy the name of this. So we can give the exact name. And this Foundry then calls the MCP server. And then we have a web application, which is our web portal, which I have shown you here. So this is the web app that calls the Foundry agent. So let's call it insurance claim portal. So that insurance claim portal calls the Azure Foundry agent, and that agent is linked with MCP server, and the MCP server then goes to storage account and saves the information. And for the agent, we use VS Code for testing. So this is ASP.NET website, which is our first client. So let me make a circle And then we started creating few other clients. For example, Microsoft Forms, this one. But Microsoft Forms can't call the Foundry agent directly, so we expose this functionality through Azure Function. So this Azure function calls the Foundry agent and then goes to MCP Server. So when we created this Azure function, we were able to call this from Microsoft Forms. But before that, we created a Microsoft flow. It's called Power Automate. Okay, so we call the Power Automate, then calls the function app, which calls the insurance policy agent. And the Power Automate is triggered by Microsoft Forms. We don't have icon, so let's pick this one. So this is Microsoft Forms, which triggers the Power Automate. And that triggers the function app. So this is what we did in the previous video. But in today's video, we are going to create another client. This is our second client. So let me put that in a circle. And now we are going to create another client, which would be Copilot agents. So we have a Copilot Studio, which has multiple agents. So in Copilot agent, we will trigger the function app. So in Copilot agent, we will trigger the function app. The function app will go to the policy agent, and that will connect to the MCP server and that submit the information to the storage account. So this is our third client, which we will be creating in this video. I think that's enough for the architectures. Now let's start with Copilot Studio. Okay, I am in Copilot Studio. I have to create a new agent. So let's start with create blank agent. Okay, so the name of the agent is insurance policies agent. Okay, now let's move to topics. Create a new topic. So here in this box, we describe what this topic does. So it's in this topic is triggered when new insurance policy submission is required, or a new insurance claim submission is required. So this is the trigger of this topic. If we go to the web app, we can see that we had created a form and this is what user submits. and then we take this information. So in Copilot Studio, we have to take this information from the user, and the best way to take information from the user in Copilot Studio is to create an adaptive card. So there is an option for Ask with Adaptive Card. So in that adaptive card, we can design this adaptive card, which is one way, but I would prefer if you go to the class library in entities, go to insurance claim model, and these are the fields we need. So copy these fields. Let me start a new session. Go to DeepSeek and ask for the adaptive cards. Just copy this JSON, paste it here, and save. Let's put a message. Okay, so this is the adaptive card we have generated. So let's save it. And let's test it. And we can see that we can see a form. So that's the policy content, which is multi-line, and the speech text. So whatever we write here, it will be converted to the speech. Then we can specify the comma separated tags, and then we have the number, and then we have policy status, and then we have submit button. So that looks good. Now let's have a look on the schema. So when I click on adaptive card, I see two options. One is this edit adaptive card and put the JSON, which we have done. And the second option is edit schema. So let's have a look at the schema. So content is string, which is fine. Insurer is string is fine. Is active should be Boolean. Premium amount is a number, it's fine. And then everything else is fine. Confirm and save it. Okay, now we have adaptive card ready. So once this submit policy button is clicked, we have to call a flow, which will call the Azure function. So in Copilot Studio, we can see we have option for the flows. So let me duplicate this, and let's design a flow. So what would be the trigger of this flow? So that would be whenever this agent calls the flow. So when an agent calls the flow, so that is what we need. So when this submit policy button is clicked, we will call the we will we will call the flow and pass this information. So this agent will receive that input. So let's create all these fields one by one. That would be the title of the policy. Then we have the text, which is the content of the policy. Then we have insurer of the policy. So content, insurer, the title. Now let's look for is active. So that would be yes, no. So that is status of the policy. Then premium amount. That would be a number field. We have speech text and tags. Speech text is also text. And then we have tags. So whenever we run this topic, we will call the flow here. And then we pass this information. So when the flow is called, it is expecting this as an input. And let's save it. So when this flow is called, this information is passed. And now from here, we have to call the Azure function. So if I look at the design, so in Copilot Studio, we will be calling an Azure function. So let's call an Azure function here. So we need an Azure function. So let's go to the portal. So we created this Azure function in previous video, so you can have a look. So this is the HTTP trigger we had. So now let's go to Postman and make sure this trigger is working. So we created this trigger, HTTP trigger in previous video. You can have a look. So this is the trigger. And this is the function app I have just shown you. And it's pointing to Azure. And this is my example payload. And if I say send, this should talk to the Foundry agent, which will talk to the MCP server and create two files for us in Azure Blob Storage. Let's have a look. And this should create a video and a JSON file with this information. Okay, so the time is 2:47. Okay, in 2:47, we can see two files created. The first one is that video file, which is generated. And then we have the JSON file. So looks like the function app is all working. We just need to link this function app here. So the first thing we need is the URL. So go to Postman and grab this URL. We can remove this code. So the method will be post, and then we have to pass this code which just removed here. We need to pass this as in the query. So that will be code, and the code we have already stored in a key vault. So that's the code. So we have to get this code from the key vault and use it here. And for that, we have an action called get secret. So this is the secret we need. And its value will be used here. So the secret has body/value. So that value is stored in that value section. So that's all good. Now let's work on the body. So this is the body I need to pass. Okay, so this is the content. Let's leave it hard coded for the time being, and we will work on this. So we have to replace all these placeholders with the inputs we have received. Okay, so once this function app is triggered, this returns a response, and that we have to submit back to the agent. So there is an action called respond to the agent. So what we are submitting, we are just sending a message back. But we will change it. And I think that's it here. So let's save and publish this. Let's just publish it now. So we can test it here. So I can call okay, so let's run the flow. Okay, so it's throwing us an error saying the bad gateway, possibly something to do with the URL. So let's have a look. So let's copy the URL again. So I'm not copying the code, just the URL. And that is a post method, and the code is coming from here, and this is the hardcode body, and everything else looks correct. So let's save and publish and test again. Okay, so this is 3 p.m. now. So let's have a look at the key vault. Sorry, not. So let's have a look at the storage account. So we can see that two files were created 3 p.m. So that means this is all working now. So when we submit through the function app, we receive this message. So let's put this message here. So when this function app returns, that will be a JSON object. So we know the schema. So it will be something like this. And this would be the output of that HTTP function. So that's in the body. And now we don't need to hard code it. So we can simply what's in the body message. So that will be submitted to the agent. Okay, so that looks good. Let's save it. And now submit from the proper agent. So we go here, just refresh it. Okay, so after the adaptive card, so we have to call that agent. So create a new node and go to add a tool. And here we can see that create new insurance policy. So that is exactly our agent name. So when we select this agent, now this is expecting these inputs. So the title would be coming from this adaptive card. So we are passing this input as a parameter, and this is the output. So when the output is received, we can just send a message. So that message will be displayed in the chat. So that will be the message. Okay, so that looks good to me. So let's save and run. Okay, I will go to the chat panel and I will say I want to create a new insurance policy. So that shows me the form. And then we submit the policy. So this is now calling that flow and asking for the permission. And now it's calling the HTTP function. Okay, and so that is what that flow returned. So that looks all okay. Now let's have a look at the storage account. So the time is 3/6. And I can see two files created on 3/5, which is most likely the files we have just created. So that is all looking good now. So I go back to edit topic. So after adaptive cards, we are calling this action, which is the flow. And in our flow, we have everything except the HTTP function has hard-coded values. So let's fix that now. So this content is now coming from the content property of the input, which is this. Then we have insurer. Yeah, so we are only replacing the content inside the double quotes. So I'm not replacing the comma and not changing the colon sign. So just replacing the values, the placeholders in the double quotes. So we don't have tags. Is that correct? Okay, let's have a look in a minute. So that looks good. Here we do have tags. Yeah, it's there. Okay, so that looks all good to me now. Why it's saying invalid parameters? Okay, speech text somehow got removed. And now looks fine. So let's save it. Yeah, the error has disappeared. And publish this. Now go back to topic and just create a new window. The speech text, let's ask DeepSeek. We don't need this much text. I'm just creating a simple video, so I will just copy this text. And submit. Okay, looks like has been created. So let's have a look at the storage account. So the time is 3:23. So I can see 2 files have been created. And this is the content we provided. And now let's have a look at the video.
This message is regarding your recent insurance claim for the water damage at your property.
And I think that's the content we provided for the speech. And I think that's it for today. You can now publish this agent to Microsoft Teams, which I have explained in different videos. So I have explained how you can publish this video to Teams channel, and in the Teams channel you can just specify that I want to submit an insurance policy, and you will still get this insurance form and you can submit from there. So just quickly, there is a section for the channels, and in here you select Microsoft Team and it asks for a few options, and then you can publish this agent to the teams. And I think that's it. If you liked this video and learned something new, if you have any question, just type in the comments. I will try to answer all your comments, and see you again in the next video. Bye bye.